Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Darnell Scott. I'm a photographer based in Los Angeles, California, and this is how I create.
Welcome to This Is How We Create, a show that digs deeper into the creative life of contemporary artists of color. Discover what feeds their creativity and how they found or are finding their artistic voice. Through these intimate and candid conversations, you'll gain insights into the lives of creative professionals of color that are hard to find anywhere else. Welcome back to This Is How We Create. My name is Martine Severn, your host. Photography often begins with a reluctant click of a shutter. And for our guest today, Darnell Scott, it started in a high school class he didn't even choose. This class was a detour from his dream of marine biology that would reshape his entire life. What began with photographing his skateboarding friends has evolved into a career at the intersection of photography, creativity, and visual brand management. Today, Darnell serves as the visual brand director at Apostrophe Rep in Los Angeles, where he helps photographers shape their visual identities and connect with major clients. But his journey there wasn't linear, from teaching himself Photoshop in Johnson & Johnson's law department to a challenging stint in Arizona that taught him crucial lessons about preparation and persistence. Darnell finds inspiration in unexpected places, from the asymmetrical beauty of nature in the Mojave Desert to the visual storytelling of the 1980s music videos. Darnell, welcome to the show.
I love that intro. Thank you. It made me feel so much cooler than I feel right now.
I feel like from all of these intros that I prepare, when I read it out, it is very clear that our guests have no idea how cool they are.
Oh man, yeah, it's so funny. I just kind of go through life kind of riding this wave, and I don't know, I feel hyped on the things that I like, and I don't know, I never let people take me away from that or tell me if it's cool or not. I just kind of live through it and just enjoy it. And it's what kind of speaks to everything that I do every single day of my life. So everything that I'm inspired by actually just drives me no matter what it is. And I love it.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm so glad. And that obviously comes through your photography. And you have the most insane and beautiful Instagram page. Like, I go there and I'm just like, what? Where did that come from? What is in this man's mind?
Right. Yeah. It's Instagram has been a funny thing lately because I don't post as much as I used to anymore. You know, I think I shoot a lot. I shoot every day, but I feel like having your photos being looked at in such a tiny place just feels off to me. I don't know if that makes sense to you. I mean, you're a photographer. I feel like you understand that you want to see people to see your work in a book or a large, and seeing it on a small screen kind of takes away from it. So I've been focusing more on the more real life interactions of people seeing my work, but sometimes I go through those phases of just like, maybe I should post to show proof of life.
Yeah, definitely. And then you have some of your work in the background as well.
Oh, well, so one of the pieces, this pink guy right here with the
Yeah.
cube, that's one of my works
Mhm.
from the series called Solace and Surface I do. The other two works are actually one of our artists, Tori Rust. Her work is super rad. I love this. She did this whole project on auras and photographing sidekicks with their auras, like using her lighting technique. And it's just so fitting of the kind of work that I'm inspired by every day. So I try to surround myself with like everything that just is like a big motivation for me to want to keep going out and shooting. It kind of feels like it could be in the same room as me, but
It does. It does. Kind of like the color story.
uh-huh, yeah. It's in a lot of the stuff that I love is inspired by like white and space artists like James Turrell and Doug Wheeler. And they work a lot in this kind of palette when they're working on these light pieces. So it's always these pinks, very interesting blue combinations. It's really psychedelic in a lot of ways. And I don't know, it's one of those things that just stuck with me. I've been noticing in a lot of things that I shoot, and I'm pretty sure you see it when you look at the optical promise section of my website, but it's a lot of those same colors and hues, these pinks and blues and like ultraviolet colors.
A little 80s.
A little 80s.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about growing up in New Jersey. So you fell into photography quite accidentally.
Yeah.
Tell us about that story and how photography has kind of like worked its way into your entire life.
Yeah. I just always remember, as you mentioned before, I was super into marine bio, and I wound up having this teacher that just not, we didn't click well in that class. And I just felt like he just wasn't that invested in what we were trying to learn. So I basically talked to our guidance counselor trying to figure out what other electives I could take. And I was trying to take graphic design because I felt like that was a way to be able to print out pamphlets about, sea life or how we could save the ocean. Not super preachy about it, but just like more informational, fun things. And our school was super strange. And they gave people electives based on their last names. And my last name is Scott. And I think our graphic design teacher was hot. So all the people signed up for his class and it was like closed immediately. So the only class that was available was photography. And I got placed in that class in my mind thinking like photography is something that my parents take pictures of for birthdays. Like I didn't think it was that interesting. I didn't understand the art form to it. I just only seen it as snapshots. And I think I may have mentioned it on the last episode, but I remember telling my teacher one time when she was teaching us about it, I was like, why are we even in this class? It's the most pointless thing ever. It's just like anybody could take a photo, like, which is the worst thing you could ever say to anyone. And she made me write a super long essay on Alfred Stieglitz. So I had to study Alfred Stieglitz's work and write this. I wish I could find this essay. I've been looking for it forever, but I had to write this like really long, like 2-3 page essay on Alfred Stieglitz and the impact of his work. And it made me look at photography in a different way, but I still kind of had that sentiment, kind of like, oh, you just photograph like these random things. Like, what's the big deal? And I think it wasn't until my teacher, Mrs. Bertolami, saw my work in the darkroom and was like, for a person that hates doing this, you're really good at what you're doing, And so she was always encouraging me to shoot more and more. And it was the same thing that you shoot when you first start shooting photos: railroad tracks, brick walls, like things that you're trying to make it artful so you could get an A in class. And it wasn't until, you know, I think that was around the same year I got into skateboarding, and my friends were getting really, really good, really, really fast. And I was looking through skateboard magazines all the time and seeing these photos. And I was like, oh, well, if everyone's good and I'm not as good as them, why don't I start just shooting skate photos? So I had no idea what I was doing. And I would just shoot these really crazy photos and really bad angles, but the lighting was always great. And I would always try different ideas once we learned about things like liquid emulsion and like being able to take, the emulsion and put it on skateboard decks or put it on pieces of wood, and trying different things like that. And it's just grown from there. And I always tell people like, I used to be like, oh, I'm going to be the only Black skate photographer. But then I would see this guy's name in the magazine named Atiba Jefferson. And I don't have any reference of what his face looks like, what he looks like. But I was just like, well, he has a Black guy's name. So I'm going to use him as a hero. I'm going to use him as a hero. I don't know what he looks like or anything, but he's going to be my photo hero. So I had a person to emulate through photography, through skate photos. And I was just trying to mimic what he was shooting. I don't know what he was shooting with. I didn't know anything at that time about lights, like flashes and all these things. I was just going by the angles and the tricks. And from then on, I think around this time, probably like senior year of high school is when emailing became a thing. So like I'm like emailing photographers, asking how they do these things. Like you start getting websites that showing you people setups and things like that. So it kind of took me into this realm of like, oh, that's how you get all this different lighting from different spots. Oh, this is how you're using fisheye lenses. I was wondering why my 50 millimeter lens didn't know how to bubble. Like all these different things. You learn all these different things about lenses and lighting. And I was using a Pentax K1000 for 4 years. So like it wasn't until literally I graduated high school that I learned that, oh, there's tons of different cameras, tons of different lenses, tons of different flashes. So once I figured out all of these different tools that you could use to capture photographs, I just went crazy. Just all the money I got from graduation, I just blew it all on camera equipment. And I went from there, and to me, the rest is history. It's just I was following the skateboarding thing for so long, but at the same time, when you're not out skating, you still have that antsiness and that wanting to take pictures of something. So I think that's where it turned into, photographing everything that I'm surrounded by. And it just snowballed from there. It just thinking about it in hindsight now, it's just like making my like eyes water up, because it's just seeing that growth from 10th grade up until now, and like where my mind has gone and what my inspiration has been is just, it's a beautiful thing.
As you were chatting and you mentioned how your response was like photography, how hard could it be? It's a lot harder than it seems.
It's a lot harder than it seems.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was saying you're just used to seeing your family's photos, and they're nothing particularly special other than moments. That actually leads up to why I finally figured out like what photography means to me, which I'll get to in a bit. But yeah, you see these moments, and you don't see anything really artful about it. It's just like, oh, it's a snapshot of me riding a bike, or me graduating school, or our family eating at Thanksgiving. Like there was nothing about composition or anything to it. So it took a long time for my brain to ever think that it could go beyond that. And it's funny because you see photography everywhere. It's in advertising, it's in newspapers, it's in all these places. But I think when you're not actively seeking that kind of stuff out, your brain just thinks, oh, it's just this imagery, and you move on from it.
And we both know that if we are looking at an image, particularly if it's one that a professional has done, the easier it looks, the harder it was to
The harder
create.
it was. I used to love this website. It was like a blog that used to tell you, it would take a famous photograph that you knew, like say like a Mario Testino photo, and it would actually tell you how it was lit. Like the person would draw out, I'm not sure if Mario Testino actually lit it that way, but the person would basically recreate the photo with his lighting schematics of it. And I would just be like, man, that looked just like a regular soft photo shot by a window, but this photo actually had like 8 different lights, like shot in studio, So it's like you said, this the more simple it looks, the more complicated it actually is.
And to think about how much time professional photographers take to capture the everyday and to give you those moments that and
Mhm.
make you feel like, oh, somebody must have just snapped that. And the fact that it looks so easy for me
Yeah.
is always really incredible. There was one assignment I had like a job where we had to make a November, I think it was actually early December. Early December, it was snowing, and we had to light it and make it look like it was a summer day at and the golden hour.
That's so funny. That's
But
pretty funny.
we did it. We did it. But it was like, if you didn't know, you would never know. It
You
was
never know.
snowing. It was
Yeah.
snowing. We were outside. It was December and it looked like it was July.
Oh man, yeah. I that's one of the reasons I went. I wish I went to college for photography, because I had to do things like that in the middle of the job. Like you get hired for a job, and you're like, oh, it's like December, like living in New York City, shooting in the winter. They need you to shoot for summer. Like same exact thing. Hey, it's snowy outside, but we need you to make it look like it's summertime in Montauk or something. You're like, I guess I got to warm this up some. And you're trying to figure it out on set, and you're talking to your assistants like, yo, so like I've never had to do this before, need some pointers, like you lean onto your team. You never realize how much you like get to lean on your team to kind of help you through a lot of these things that may be complicated. And again, like you said, like when you get to kind of practice it before, it kind of makes it a little easier. But my brain never thought of it that way when I was younger. It was kind of just like, oh, I get this assignment, cool, I can make it happen. And then you get these different things thrown at you, and you're like, oh, I got to problem solve it like right now, and I only have 8 hours to do it in.
Mhm.
It made it
So
through, by the way.
well, obviously. Darnell, Darnell, the hardest part of being a photographer is the time that it takes for us to sharpen our eye, because we have an idea of what it is that we want to create. But yet,
Mhm.
as we've just chatted about, we don't have the skill to get there. Can you talk to me a little bit about your evolution of like getting your eye to be closer to where you are creating now? Because I think your work is just amazing, but I'm not even sure if you're creating your dream work, if you're creating the work that you dream of creating.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really good question. I think I used to when I was younger, I was really great at envisioning. Like I would this is like pre-mood boards, pre-understanding about mood boards and things. I'm like a photography. I'm like an art encyclopedia. My brain sees a piece that I like fall in love with, and it's there, and it's going to come out in some shape or form. If not like the whole concept in general, maybe the lighting, maybe the color palettes and things like that. And I used to be able to envision all of these things when I was younger. So like when I look back at some older work that I have, and I'm like, wow, that looks exactly like how I saw it in my head. And as I got older, I think once I started getting more into fine art and the landscape thing was more like, I've always wanted to go to this place and I'm just going to go and take photos. Like I'm going to see how it goes and, walk from there. It wasn't really envisioning like how a lot of landscape photographers do. They have apps for it. They know when the sun's going to hit it. They have all of these things to help them do it. But I think being at that place in a moment in time was more meditative for me. And I just had my camera there to photograph it. I never went out of my way to be like, I'm going here to photograph this one mountain or this one place. It was more like I'm exploring this area and everything that I see that captivates me is what I'm going to photograph. So I think over time, that's how I sharpen my eye. It's more like me leaning into what feels right in that moment in time. I'm a big believer of like being present. And I think having a camera in front of your eyes at time kind of takes away that presence at times, if that makes sense, because you're trying to capture this moment and instead of like being immersed in that moment in of itself, you're sitting there fiddling with your settings trying to get it and you're missing whatever's happening at that time, like if you don't shoot the shutter. So I always love photography specifically for the reason of keeping my present static for the rest of my life. Because I'm missing out on that moment, taking a photo of it. It's something that I can go back and like immerse myself into and remember that moment. It's keeping presence like alive forever. There is no past or future for it. It's just being in that moment, no matter how long I get to hold on to that print. So I think that's what's kind of helped me move along as a photographer in general is just being able to like, I guess to not be cliche, finding that decisive moment of when to actually press the button. When is it like, the most important for me? So I think with the landscape work, that's how that worked. With the fine art stuff, that is just being so immersed into the art that I like. I think with the fine art stuff, none of it's inspired by photography at all. A lot of it's inspired by the light and space movement of the 60s, a lot of install work and experiential work. I'm a big fan of tangibility and experiences. I think, the one thing that you don't really get in photography because it's such a 2D experience is like that feeling of what it would feel like, what it would smell like, what it would look like visually, lighting wise and things like that. And I don't know if you've ever been to a James Turrell exhibit or any of those exhibits that are really light heavy, but they're never easy to photograph at all because they're not supposed to be, you're not supposed to experience it through a photograph. You're supposed to experience it there in that space. And I don't have, $2-3 million investors into building spaces like that. So I felt like maybe I could try to have that same experience through a photograph. I tend to like to blow a lot of those pieces up pretty big because I want people to feel like they're like submerged into those spaces, even with the solace and surface pieces. None of those are manipulated in any way. Like it's not 3D, it's all shot in camera. And, the colors are more responsive to what it looked like when I was really there. And I want people to see those pieces and be so tempted to touch it to see if it's like real or not. It's so textural in all of these ways. And I love, I love pushing people to look at a photograph more than just like a decisive moment. I want people to be inside of it. And if that makes any sense, it means a lot to me. And I think like if I could have my work feel that way, I feel like it would be successful for me in that sense.
Okay. How did you come to find or to settle on landscapes in particular? Because I think you photographed different things in the past, and so how did you come to decide on this body on this
I
subject?
photograph. I have one of those things where it's like I photograph everything, but I think with the landscapes, I think that was more and I was kind of coming back to these roots of what I was like growing up, like being obsessed with nature. I miss Jacques Cousteau. I think there was a point where it was like, I don't know why I never got into like deep sea photography because if I love marine bio so much, I should have like taken everything I learned and went deep sea. But I think I just never committed to that. But I found myself always outside. I found myself always camping, always hiking. I wish I could tell you the exact moment when I was really getting into that world, but all of a sudden I was just one day just really into nature, like deeply into nature and natural things and wanting to understand the natural history of the world that we live in. So a lot of these trips I was going on was like I said, it was meditative, but also exploring like what these things were. I'd have like a little Audubon, book of trees or birds trying to figure out, how everything is, making up the landscape of the earth. I think I may have mentioned this the last time, but before I moved here, I spent all this time trying to figure out like all the different ecosystems of the eastern like forest system, boreal forests, swamps, all of these things. And I finally felt like I was at a point where it's like, great, I understand all of these biomes. I could start like photographing it and having more of a great way of, documenting it and, making some sort of my own guidebook that I would love to like make down the line. And then I moved out here and was like, I got to start this all over again. So it's kind of it's kind of back into discovering and exploration and just like teaching myself. I've been using landscape photography to teach myself a lot of it because I could just go and like it's easy to find references of these things and it keeps me from disrupting these ecosystems. I know a lot of people like to take rocks or take all of these natural things back home and make their own art and stuff from it. And I feel like this is a way for me to be able to take these things home with me without physically removing them from their natural place.
That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful because I mean these things they're there, but we keep taking them, don't we? We take the shells, we take rocks, and so on. Yeah.
Humans are a big disruptor. So it's like, I mean, while I use film and digital things, but how can I reduce, my actual impact on natural environments? I'm already hiking through it, which is already like damaging the grass or these things like that. So it's like, what can I do to be able to, show people these beautiful places and have them aware of what is at stake when we don't take care of these places, and like again, how do I do it without taking these articles back home and keeping it for myself? I used to be that person that collect coral or collected shells, and now it's just like I can't bring myself. Even when I go to Death Valley, there's geodes everywhere, and I'm just like I could just keep them here. That's where they're from. Like I could take a picture, a macro photo of it, and just keep moving. Like it's I don't need to keep. I don't. Earth is already surround around me, and I have the photos. I don't need to keep the physical things in my hand.
Let's talk a little bit about your process. So,
Yeah.
do you use mostly film or do you shoot digital as well?
No, I shoot digital. I kind of started shooting 4x5 not too long ago. I'm not sure if you shot 4x5, but that could be a very harrowing process. Carrying this thing around in the woods and I have like this huge army like cache thing that it sits in. Like a friend of mine got it from an estate sale in Arizona. She gave it to me for free. And I was like, this thing probably doesn't even work, but it works like a charm. It's like one of those rail system Calumet 4x5s. So I've been trying to play with that when I shoot landscapes, but it's a little cumbersome to bring around. So I can always lean back into shooting digital anyway. I think I'm at the point now where it's like I've shot I learned shooting film. Shooting film is fun, but I think at the same time I like to keep moving when I shoot photos. I know a lot of people shoot film because it's a little more meditative for them or it lets them like stop and take a moment or what have you. But I kind of feel like you only get but so much time to move around in places. And because I like to explore, it's kind of like I like to shoot and keep moving. Maybe I'll find a different angle of whatever I'm photographing. So my process is pretty simple. I travel minimal. It's like it's usually my camera bag. Now I have two cameras, one for specifically like snapshot little things, like when I'm like shooting flowers and it's not as composed. And then I have my pro camera, which that is like it's more focused. It's me composing a little bit more. Sometimes I'll have it on a tripod. A lot more times I'll have it freehand. I'll bring three lenses with me. It's usually a 35, a 50, and I think I have like this 70 to 300 millimeter lens.
Ooh, 70
And
to 300. Whew.
yeah, it's good because I again I love details. I love that these telephoto lenses flatten things too. So it's like, say for example, you'll see like a road heading into a mountain, and you just the way that it compresses the mountain against the road, it gives you the sense of the scale and massiveness of this mountain. Whereas if you shot it on a 50, it may not feel as impactful. So I love that the telephoto lens does that. I also use it as a binocular. So if I see a bird, then I'm like, oh, what bird is that? And it's on the other side of like a mountain range. I could just take it and zoom in and be like, oh, that's just like a red-tailed hawk or something like that. But yeah, and a lot of it is just, shooting the snapshot stuff is fun because it's me just being able to shoot anything that I see. And it's like, I don't know if it's necessarily going to be good or not, but it's something that, again, it's like, I felt like it was important enough for me to photograph it. And with the other camera, it's just making my brain feel more focused and honed in on like particular things. And then, once I'm done doing that, I carry my iPad with me everywhere I go. I have the Lightroom on it, and I a lot of times just upload it there. If I'm on the road, I'm just sitting there like in the car for hours, just like, playing with the images that I shot, things like that. And then, it doesn't go to Instagram that much anymore, but a lot of them goes to prints. A lot of them I sell to private collectors where, there's people that I have that collect my work, and I'll be like, hey, here's a new body of work I've been working on the past few months. Like, let me know if this is something that you're interested in, and it goes to there. I feel like for a person that does not utilize Instagram that much, I do pretty decently with my photographs.
You've said so many things that have like my mind go.
That's my brain racing thoughts.
You're right. Okay. First and foremost, tell me about the planning because you're bringing a bit of gear with you and you're hiking to these locations. How much prep do you do in advance?
Thank God for things like Google Earth because life would be probably, I can't imagine how people did it before. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was a lot of the same thing, like using geological maps, but I use Google Earth and I use the USGS maps a lot to help me with these. They're really helpful in forest roads. Me and I think I mentioned before, me and my wife are really into camping a lot. So we use these in general just to go camping and find like dispersed camping because I feel like we don't believe in paying for camping, but I use these same things to kind of help me figure out, how crazy some of these hikes may be, how the contour lines in it will show you, like, is this a steep mountain face that I'm going to walk up, or is it something that the grade is really easy? So a lot of it is like pre-planned, just in using some of these apps that'll just tell me like, oh, these are some of the trails, here's some of the views. Google Earth has like the 3D view, so if you click it a certain way, it could take you to wherever the location you had, and you could look at what it would look like where you were standing in a 3D mode. You could change like the time of day if you want, so you could see like, oh, the shadows will look super weird in this part of the day. A lot of times it's just also just a general place. Like I'll go on Reddit and randomly read something about like, hey, there's this abandoned ship in Palos Verdes, but you need to go walk around the entire bluffs to get to the ship. So it's like, all right, like I'm just going to go to the entrance of this trail, and I'm going to just walk to the ship. And the main goal is to photograph the ship, but what am I going to see on the way there? By the way, I never made it to the ship because I was just so intrigued by everything that I saw on my way there. You'd stop and you'd photograph, you try to get these beautiful photos, you try to get this great landscape shot. The sun is setting, so you're like, oh my God, it's like the gradient in the sky is looking even better than it did 20 seconds ago. Like you're sitting there trying to get all of these photos before you make it to the point of interest. And like, I never made it to that point of interest anyway. So, but I got a lot of beautiful photos from it. I think if you look at my diagrams to build a perfect Earth on my website, the very first body of work that you see, it's me holding up all of these different rock structures that I was just finding. That's all on that trail. That's on that trail. Yeah. And it's just like some of that stuff, like you'd be like there's one that's like a diamond shaped rock, and you would think that was like planted there or something, but that's just like from the way like water was eroding the rock. Wherever that rock was positioned, where it couldn't get like some of those other ones, it eroded into this smooth, beautiful, like triangular rock. So some of these things that you find on the way there is just like, it's more intriguing to me than what I think you would have found. And I found out also, I think down the line that the ship sunk anyway. Like you can't even see it anymore. Like the I guess high tide basically just drug it down more. So the ship is in, you can't even see it anyway. So I would have went there anyway and not seen anything.
Well, I will encourage folks to make it to your website because I mean, the images, I was looking at it to prep for this episode and I was like, where is that? And how did he do it? And I have to say, I love the timelessness of the images and then your watch. And I don't know if you meant to have that.
Oh my God.
It's like there's that push and pull with it.
Yeah.
You know, you have like, you're wearing this metal watch and you're holding these really beautiful artifacts that that are so strange in shapes.
And I'm like, like you said, I'm so more intrigued by this weird shaped rocks and things coming out of the rocks. I wouldn't even notice the watch until like someone told me.
Well, you know, I want to say that I don't know if it's an artistic choice and you're saying it wasn't, but I really love it. In my mind, it feels like it's saying just go. And it's also talking to us about the timelessness of, this is how I'm like taking it and I'm like running with it. But it reminds of us of how we have just a little bit of time here. And then we have these artifacts that have been here for how many thousands,
how many years,
if not how many years. And then obviously from looking at some of the rocks, we're looking at them and we could tell that they're sulfuric. Is it that they're the type of rocks where, I forget the term for it, but there must have been a volcano at some point because of the holes? It usually has to do with lava meeting water and then what happens?
You'd actually be surprised. The holes were caused by mussels.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Wow.
The ocean. So the ocean over the years, it basically softens the rock and the mussels just burrow themselves inside the rock. Like if you look closely in a lot of those, you could see the mussels like living inside the rock because they just like chew. Yeah, they chew in through the rock. Like, so it's all those holes are just mussels that chewed in through the soft rock.
Beautiful, beautiful work.
It's super, yeah. But things like that I had to find out because I was just like, I asked that same questions like, how are there all these holes like inside of these rocks with these mussels? Like I had a feeling that the mussels had something to do with it, but I just didn't understand the science behind it. And it's just like, yeah, the erosion kind of helped soften that rock and help those mussels be able to burrow into those things. And over time, you know, when the tide goes down, the rocks dry out. So it's not even wet anymore. So they still look like solid, really solid rock.
Amazing.
And that's why I love it. It's the science. It goes back to the things I loved about science growing up. And I think, you know, learning a lot of the art I love is all science based. Like I love cultural things and so, like, you know, social based art, but it's something about science, like learning, like being able to somehow mix technology and science with art is such a fascinating thing to me. And it's just one of those things that I think I'm trying to discover within myself of how to make that work as well.
Mm. Okay, so the second question I have is about how are you carving time out for these projects and to explore, particularly since your life has changed since the last time you were on the podcast. You have 2 little ones.
2 children, yeah.
How has that dance been for you?
Yeah, well, one thing I could recommend is do not bring your 3 or at that time 2-year-old out when you're trying to do landscape photos. Not conducive to anything. I mean, I tried to take my son to Mount Wilson once, and I had these ideas like based on what I saw on Google Earth of what I wanted to shoot at Mount Wilson. And I took my kid and he was just not into it. Like I was trying to shoot and it's just taking away from everything I was trying. So that's the first rule. Do not bring your kids like until they're a little older for these kind of trips. It has been a little tougher to be able to carve out time for these projects. I've been photographing my kids a lot more. I felt like that's been kind of helping me a lot, kind of keep sane in this time of not being able to shoot these deeper projects. And I don't know, I try to do the more fine art stuff. I have a few things that I've been shooting, like funnily enough, experimenting with my kids' toys because they're so colorful and they also are in the same scheme of like working with planes and shapes and colors. So I've been kind of playing with this stuff a little bit, like making these really experimental stuff with their toys. But it's been rough, honestly, trying to do that with like, my what I do for my career, the time that I have to spend with my children. Me and my wife had like a lot of crazy things kind of happen amongst all that. So it's also been trying to like, help support my wife through it all at the same time too. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like, anytime that I could find time to shoot photos, when we go camping, when we do our little hikes, they may not be as dynamic, I think, as what I was shooting before, but they still are like a moment in time of things that I do find impressive and beautiful. And I think it's shifted. Instead of mountainscapes and oceans, it's been a lot of sunsets and sunrises and clouds and the gradients of the sky. It's something that California has this really just insane view of the sky every time the sun sets. And we have a balcony that overlooks the entire west side with no obstructions from buildings or anything. So every day, before we put the kids to bed, we always sit on the balcony and just watch the sunset and talk to them about how the light changes. And I'll be sitting there photographing it. So it's trying to take the moments that I'm spending with my family and photographing there. And if I could get like these little gems of things that I'm able to that fits to my like, style of shooting, I'll roll with it. But I don't know if you've even noticed, like from looking at my Instagram, some of my perspectives have changed. You'll see a lot more like street things, a lot more LA centric things, So it's being in that moment and trying to keep my eye like in tune. I don't want to use having kids as an excuse as to why I don't shoot anymore. So it's like trying to find these things that I can keep shooting and keep making and figuring out how it still fits into the style of what I shoot. And yeah, that's how I carve out time. It's just anytime that I have where I have my camera is me carving at that time. I can make a book from all the great photos I have of my kids, but we don't even show them online. Like I'm going to wait till they're able to be like, yeah, you could post that, Dad.
We don't show photos of our son either. It's not, I don't feel that it's my right to do that, but
yeah. We do the thing where we throw glasses over their eyes. Like if it's something that's like really that great, like I'll throw like these little like fake Instagram GIF. It'll be like a GIF of like sunglasses, and we'll put it over their eyes so you don't have a full face. But there's just so many photos. Like my wife looks through our photos sometimes. She's like, "Oh, these are some of like the best photos I've seen of kids." Like I'm like, "Yeah, but we're not allowed to use these. Like we don't put them online. We kind of we did like people shoot photos of our kids at events or like anything. You're not like post that online. Like we're just really weird about putting our kids online, especially without their consent added to. I mean, not that they're old enough to really know what consent is, but we just like giving that. We want them to have that option when they're old enough to be like, yeah, that's cool to use that."
Okay, so at this point, I'd love to turn the conversation over to your fine art practice. You talked about how you now are at the point where you have collectors. And when you have new work, you'll just reach out to your collectors. Can you walk me through the process of getting to the point where you now have collectors, where you've been able to build this community, these folks?
Yeah, a lot of them are just people that champion my work from the beginning. They've been following things that I've been doing since I first started, selling my work and being in group shows and things like that. A lot of it helps with group shows. I think being a part of a community and having people that really loved your work enough to want to like share it with people, I think definitely helped, especially in New York. In LA, it's not that it's harder. It's just I haven't really kind of had that same interaction with people. But I feel like in New York and things like that, certain places that I've shown in like Japan and in Europe, they'll randomly be like, "Hey, we're doing this group show. We'd love to show your work." And, someone at that show will see the work and they'll be like, "Hey, I saw your website. Like, I'd love to buy this." Or like, "Do you have anything similar? I'd love to see more work that you may not have." So a lot of it is like making tons of PDFs of work that, is what they're looking for. A lot of people have particular preferences. Like, "Hey, like, I see that you have this landscape work, but I'm looking particularly for like moss on the beach, or I'm looking for, rocks that come out of the ocean. Like, do you have anything like that?" People are pretty specific about the type of things that they're looking for. So it's pretty awesome that I somehow have those particular things in my archive. Like that's the plus side of shooting everything, is that you most likely have it hidden somewhere in your archive. So it's great to be able to have these people that really appreciate the work that I'm making and creating, and want to have it hanging up in their house, or showing it at a gallery show. I guess I think social media may have helped a little at times. I don't really get as many inquiries through Instagram. Like, I don't have people like, "Hey, I saw this piece on Instagram. Like, I'd love to buy a print." A lot of them, a lot of my success, surprisingly enough, is through like real life interactions. Even people, like if I meet people randomly, like I'll talk about my show, I'll talk about my work, and they'll like, "I want to see some of your work." So I'll show them like, maybe a new project that I'm working on, or I'll show them like, a body of work that I just finished on my website or something like that. And they'll be like, "Oh my God, like, are you selling this print?" And I'm like, "I am now." So it's been really helpful to just be able to like actually talk with people and talk it through with people. And I feel like it's just all luck of the draw, and just conveniently meeting the right people that are willing to want to like buy your art and just really be into what you're doing.
And in terms of setting up yourself to be able to print, not on demand, but almost, right? Are you Did you have to make connections with printers? Are you printing on your own? Or how are you handling
Yeah,
that part of your work?
I connect with printers. I use Icon LA for a lot of my prints, because they use Moab paper. I'm a big Moab paper fan. I love Luster paper. I know everyone's into their art rags and mats, but I don't know. It's something, maybe it's growing up like looking at fashion and skate magazines. There's something about that like sheen and color that you get when you print out on Luster. And it's like glossy without the awful glares. So you get like, but you get the same like feeling of a glossy photo, but like it's still flat. It's so hard to describe. I wish I could describe it in a better way. And I just feel like it makes my work just feel so. It makes it feel tangible. I know that people are into it, wanting to feel like a piece of art, but I kind of want it to feel like it's a window to reality. And like I don't. None of my photos are like, retouched, or there's no. None of them are composites. Everything is shot in camera. So that's why I say like I love it when everything feels like a window into reality. Like when you look at my photos, because it's just like it is what it is in the world that we're living in right now. So I try to make sure that my work has that feeling of tangibility to it. So Icon LA, you guys always kill it for me consistently. And it also just made me realize that like every time I get my prints back from them and it looks exactly the way, like my computer's not calibrated at all. So I'm like, man, I hope this comes out good, because my computer has never been calibrated. And I'm just like, man, maybe I do know what I'm doing, because every time Icon prints it out, it looks exactly like how I want it to look. It's perfect.
So you must have to archive your work. And I mean, we talked about this on episode 21 when you were on the podcast a few years ago. So in your work, archiving and organizing photos, you've developed quite a system to do this. And I'm curious about the emotional aspect of this. How do you decide what's worth keeping and what's worth saving?
I mean, I guess what I'm just going through it is just my relationship to it when I'm revisiting it. Because the thing is, when I'm shooting, I still think a lot like a film photographer when I'm shooting. Like I never revisit the photo after I shoot it. Like, some people take a picture and they look at it to see if they got it before they move on. It's kind of like, hey, here's some photos. I got to keep it moving. And like, I try to separate myself from it in that moment, because within the time I take to look at the back of my camera, I could be missing something just as crucial. So I try to wait till I get home, or on my iPad, to kind of like scroll through things. And there honestly is no deep thought into my editing process. It's kind of just like, this is garbage, this is great, this is garbage, this is great. And then like, I do. My rating system is pretty straightforward. Like I use the flag to like keep the things that I like. I X the things I don't like, delete all the rejected work. And then I go through all that stuff again, and I 5-star like the creme de la creme. It's like, this is definitely going to be used on my website. This is definitely going to be used for this. And then I think it's like That's the 5-star. The 3-star is just like, these are great. I don't know what this will be used for down the line, but it may mean something later. Like I never have a project in mind when I'm shooting things. It's kind of just like going with the flow. And then after a few months, I kind of just go through and just be like, oh, I had a cohesive body of work here that like all fits. I could make this out of something, a zine or a project or things like that. And then I'm a big advocate of smart collections on Lightroom. I'm not sure how many people use Lightroom. It's so crucial. Like, I'm a big keyworder. So it's like anytime I put particular keywords in, I'll never remember to drag it and drop it into places. So to know that like I put a keyword in and it automatically adds it into a smart collection for me. If I ever have to go back and find, the art stuff, the landscape stuff, if I'm like, oh man, like I know I shot this huge body of work in Death Valley. I don't have to go, but I've been to Death Valley like 8 different times. I don't have to go through all of this archive to look for it. I just go to that smart collection and it has anything that's tagged Death Valley in it. So it's my organization skills on that is like super crucial. And it's all momentary. It's all how I feel in that moment. And I'm sure you get this too. There's sometimes where you look at a photo and you're just kind of like, yeah, whatever. And then 6 years down the line, you see and you're like, what was I thinking? This photo is incredible. That happens a lot. And that happens a lot with me. I recycle photos where I thought was just like, I thought I deleted this photo, but thank God I didn't, because like, this is one of the sickest photos I've ever shot. Like it happens all the time. And I tell people never to really delete your photos unless it's literally just like the worst photo ever, because you just never know how it will fit into whatever narrative you have later in your life.
Oh, so good. So good. I feel like this episode is you've shared so much, and you've shared so much based on, very simply how to organize your photos in Lightroom, and not necessarily just photos. It could be your prints. It could be so many different things. No one's ever talked about Google Earth the way that you have. And I'm just thinking about the number of personal projects I've done that would have benefited using Google Earth.
We use it a lot for skateboarding. One of my good friends was the one who put me on. When we lived in Arizona, he would take me to some places, and I'm like, dude, this is literally in the middle of nowhere. Like, we had to like drive off road for 2 hours to get to this random place. Like, well, how did you find this? Like, oh, dude, Google Earth, man. I just Google Earth everything, and I found this. And I was like, you literally found something in Google Earth that may not have been there, because Google Earth doesn't show it to you in real time. It shows it to you like satellite from maybe a few months ago or a year ago. So it's just like, you kind of also have to trust, like those type of things, you kind of have to trust it. But like generally it's pretty accurate to like what you look at when you go on there. I also wanted to backtrack real quick just to the Lightroom thing. I learned something new, which I think might help my organization even more. I was reading about this person that has multiple catalogs. And for those who doesn't use it, like Lightroom works in catalogs, like your whole archive is in a catalog. And like my entire life is in one catalog. And this person was talking about how every project he does is in the catalog. And I was like, that sounds pretty extensive. And I think like another person was like, that's a poor idea. They were like, what you should do if you want to make multiple catalogs, like you should have a catalog that's dedicated to like personal things. Like, so like your family stuff, anything that's personal, you should have one that's dedicated to your fine art and one that's dedicated to specifically commercial or editorial jobs that you're doing. And it just made my brain go, I was like, that would make life so much, because it's like, imagine having almost 20 years of your life in just one place, and you're trying to like, I mean, like it's a little better. Yeah. Like, I mean, once I learned archiving, like it's been better the past like maybe 10 years, but like whenever I'm searching for things from like, 2004, it's kind of a nightmare. So it's one of those things where you're like, man, it's now about to be this ongoing long process, because I'm rescanning all of my film too. So it's like, or I'm sorry, I'm DSLR scanning all of my film. So it's like, now I'm about to like start refilling up this catalog with strictly like film work that I ever shot.
Oh, I have to do the same. We just got a NAS. And so about over the holidays, I have to back up everything anew. So that'll be fun.
Have you ever tried the DSLR scanning?
Is it a new one? There's a new one out that I saw.
Oh, I mean, I just use my camera. Like, so it's basically all it is like you would take your camera, you get like a macro lens, like macro 90 millimeter lens. That's the one. No, mine was the 85 and a macro 85 millimeter lens. And you get a light box that has like a strong CRI lighting. And you could take your film and you scan your film, raw photos. You just take pictures of each of your film. And like, because it's macro, it gets all the information from your film. And like Lightroom has a plugin called Negative Lab Pro, and you basically just like convert your negatives. And like slides, you don't have to convert slides, obviously, but your negatives, like it converts your negatives, and it's so much quicker than scanning. Like people are into the drum scanning or the, Epson scanners. And it's like you wait like like depending on what size you make it, you wait so long to like scan it. I could go through like a whole roll of film in like less than 10 minutes, like scanning.
Wow.
Yeah, I do the whole roll in like 5 minutes, and then it takes me like maybe like 30 minutes to like process it in Negative Lightroom, like Negative Lab. And it's like you don't have to deal with all the like when you scan and you have to like highlight the film a certain way so it doesn't change the color. It's such a pain. And like you now have this high res like scan of your photo that you didn't have to drum scan and like have to wait like an hour for it to fully scan, and like it gets all the highlights and shadows. It's such a great technique to do. One of those random things I found on YouTube. I don't even remember what I was looking at, but I randomly saw it. And once I bought it and started doing it, I was like, I'm sold. This is the greatest invention. I don't know why people want to spend like hundreds of dollars on a scanner when you could just do it on your digital camera.
I have so much to scan. Oh gosh.
Trust me, you'll get through it so much faster than doing it on an Epson scanner. I've been through, but I started maybe a year ago. I'm through like more than half of my archive already of just negatives, just because it's such a fast process. It's literally on a little light box. It's in a negative holder. You already have like my macro lens is a manual focus one, and then it has the focus, and you're tethered shooting. So it's like you never have to refocus.
Oh, you're tethered. That makes all the difference.
Oh yeah. No, no way.
I was like, how is he?
Yeah, no, it's tethered, and like you have the peak focusing. So all you're doing is you're putting your negatives into the slide thing. Take a picture, next one. Take a picture, next one. Take a picture, next one.
Are you doing it in Capture One?
No, everything. I use Smart Shooter.
Okay.
I use Smart Shooter because I don't have Capture One. I have Lightroom, and Lightroom has. I heard Lightroom's like. I have a Sony camera, and I think now they just started using Sony for tethering. But I've been using Smart Shooter which is like a tethering program that's really great. And yeah, that's how I tether my work if I ever have to tether work.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Darnell, thank you so much for coming back on the show. This has been a lot of fun. We got to talk about things that we did not talk about before.
Yeah, thank you. This is great. Yeah, this is fun. I love art conversations. They're just always, like I said, it's always one of those things that you leave feeling like you learned a lot about the people that you're speaking to. You learn a lot about yourself. I'm not sure if that ever happens to you, but when you walk away and you're like, oh man, it's always circling in my head, but until you say it out loud, that's when it like really hits you. So it's really nice to get to like speak out on these things that I just always have roaming around in my head all day.
Hi there. I have a quick favor to ask you before you go. If you're loving the show, would you mind taking a quick second to leave us a 5-star review on your favorite go-to podcast app? Here's the thing. Those reviews are like magic fairy dust. They help other creatives of color discover our show and tap into their own artistic superpowers. While you're at it, why not subscribe to our Substack newsletter, Creative Matters? Creative Matters is like a weekly dose of inspiration delivered straight to your inbox. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. All right, that's all that I have for you today. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bye.